Welcome in. Wednesday edition, Robby and Rexrode. I'm Joe Rexrode. Nick Keyser producing as always. We got extra PK today. Robby Stanley's off today. Paul Kaharski normally joins us from 8 to 9. Today, join us from 6 to 9 here on Robby and Rexrode. Proudly sponsored by Chuck McDowell Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. So you thought you were about to talk, but I cut you off. PK, how you doing?
Patiently awaiting my turn, Joe, as usual. I'm happy to be here. Hope that Robby has a good day. Ready to roll, caffeinated and all of that stuff, inspired by the show before us that was saying some ridiculous things. And ready to roll. I know you're fired up to get through this show because you're going to big places. Everybody's traveling. You're traveling. I'm traveling. So we've got stuff to get on to.
A lot going on.
Happy to be here, as always.
Yes. Happy to have you. A lot going on. And, yeah, we're going to get to some of these. Some of this Kyle Shanahan stuff is just, to me, it's like it's incredible how hyperbolic some of this stuff is.
Absolutely.
But
I'm anxious to dig into that.
But I want to start here with the Nashville Predators. Now, first of all, you, PK, were at the game Saturday. Were you there to see the full comeback? Did you see it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, you saw the whole thing.
I was stunned because they were awful down 4-2. I'm always stunned by how hockey teams are able to be so flat so often, and there's such a degree of flatness and coming out of flatness. Do they have jump? Do they not have jump? And they were down 4-2 in the third. I was sure they were done. I was sending you guys emojis about
you told us
how good the setting the setup they have for guests is, because we had a terrific time, but how bad the hockey was and how lethargic they looked. And for them to come back with 2 goals late and to get it into overtime, they really flipped the vibe in the last 10 minutes of regulation, and then with a great overtime was truly impressive, because there was no indication before that they had it in them.
Yeah.
It was more of an indication
win.
that they would play like they played last night and sustain that or flop and have the flop be the result,
right?
Which is what they did last night.
So Andrew Burnett very unhappy, and Nick Keyser was there for practice. And then basically, last night, and you some of the comments after this game, 4-2 Devils in Bridgestone Arena, Roman Yossi talking about them getting outworked, out-hustled. It's captain's night, so it's I would say a little bit of embarrassment involved when you have, guys like Kimmo Timonen and Shea Weber and all these former captains in the house to be honored, and you really just get dominated, just get handled by the New Jersey Devils. And Andrew Burnett, after the game, I guess continuing to be not super happy with his team.
It's a tough opponent on Thursday. What's the message got to be going into that one, and who needs to deliver that message?
Well, I think we're at the stage where we're going to dictate where we are here for the next 2 weeks. And tonight we dictated that we weren't really that interested in being in the playoffs. So it'll be a playoff game type of atmosphere again on Thursday, and hopefully
learn the lessons again. How often do you need to learn the lessons? It sounds to just and listen,
it's an 82-game season,
I know. But how often do you need to be reminded? They just seem like a very average team.
For sure.
I was looking at them compared to Arizona, and getting 2 points out of that seemed fortunate. They rose to the occasion. They didn't manage to rise to the occasion against the Devils.
Yeah, they are a limited team, but at the same time, they can play better than that. And so if you're the coach and you don't see their best, they just sent down one of their promising young players in Milwaukee, so they're making some moves here. Now, Nick Keyser, you were impressed with them early last night. In fact, I remember a tweet from you said, you can see this paying off in the first period. So what happened in your mind last night to the Nashville Predators from the start to the way that game eventually unfolded?
I think it purely boiled down to not being able to close out the game. Ryan McDonough has been, this guy that can close out the game. the Preds have these veterans that can close out games in general. Last night, everything boiled over for them. I think him going back and talking about practice and how pissed off they were, I think it does stem from that a lot. It was the attitude. But I thought early on they dictated the pace of the game as best as they could against a team that had played the night before. And look, it's disappointing because if you can't handle a team that just played in their own building last night, that's rough.
Right.
That's really rough.
Yeah, it's a back-to-back for the Devils coming into your place. They should not be handling you the way they did.
They should not. And they're a young, fast team. I thought the Preds handled them okay off the rush. That's where those Devils will beat you. But ultimately, they got a few more extra points where it mattered, and the Predators could not. And they gave up a season high for UC Saros in terms of him making saves last night. It was kind of an atrocity from that standpoint, not something that you want to do in front of your all-star goaltender. And I think the most pertinent thing was the Preds did get a goal that got taken off the board last night, too. And so
Evangelista had one, and
the effort was there.
How bad
but it was weird.
Was the goal taken off the board?
They were just showing it on TV on the replay I'm watching. I mean,
it's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
It's not a clear. I mean, it looked like it was past the line, but there was not a clear
to
look.
me, it looked like there was like shaved ice on the red line, like where it was just on top. So it was deceiving as to if it went over all the way. It was a good review by the league. The Preds didn't challenge it by any means. But that's a tough one, especially at home when now you're back at 500 exactly at home. Man, that sucks.
Yeah, no, it is interesting how they've not been as good here. I mean, it's like their road performance, you'll take that, but at home to be as underwhelming as they've been is disappointing, kind of strange. Like you said, I mean, Saros has not had the season that everyone's hoped for. I think last night was more about what was in front of him, but Dallas comes in here Thursday, massive game, a team the Preds have matched up well against, and then the team that they are directly fighting for one of those last spots is the St. Louis Blues. They go there Saturday, so we're getting here the end of the month, PK, and you got the trading deadline coming up about a week into March, and last night those comments from Andrew Brunette, that's one of those. I mean, that's a ticked off coach, but that's quite a comment. Like you're not interested in the playoffs. Of course they're interested in the playoffs, but you're getting to the point where decisions from above get dictated by your play and maybe going a different way than they looked like they might a few weeks ago.
Well, through those two games, you saw them rally hard once, and you saw them look disinterested in the playoffs once, so it's a wash.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So, I mean, I'm always amazed, you say, well, Trotz says, I've got 10 games to kind of decide which way I'm leaning. Well, now he's got 8 games to decide because the evidence through 2 games didn't really help him.
Yeah, and look, the reality of it is also it's dictated by what you're hearing on the other end of the call, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I still believe that if there's somebody out there who really, really believes that UC Saros could be the answer for them with another year on top of his deal and would want to pay a premium, then I think that's possible. Some kind of a veteran forward ad is possible. But I also think it's going to be more of a sell than a buy.
But also, I think hometown fans always think people are trading for body of work when somebody is much more likely, if they're about to make a playoff push and they think they're a great goalie away, are more likely looking for a hot goalie or somebody that looks like they could carry you right now. And does he feel like that right now? Less so than body of work.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's like he's past his prime, and it's just, I mean, he's still in his prime. But, yeah, he's not having a great season. It does not help the Preds' leverage that he's sitting there with whatever he is. He's about a 902, 903 save percentage. And this is a guy who, usually is flirting with 920. So, no, I can't. I mean, for that team, yeah, you've got to be like – look at that guy every night and what he's doing. Now,
or confidence that he heats.
Yeah,
heats
I mean, you still
which
know
is completely possible.
the body of work and the recent body of work and his age and everything tells you, he's still one of those guys. But he's sitting there with a 903, 297 goals against, and it's, frankly, I mean, this is his worst season for sure since he's become. Since he's become the primary goaltender for this team.
If you're a GM trading for him, you're counting on him to be hot in the playoffs. And if you trade for him and he's not hot in the playoffs, you look really bad.
Right. And so are you giving up – first of all, I think people inflate in their heads what people are giving up for goalies. I mean, it's just like I think around the league more and more it's like, I mean, you need – you need the offense to win a championship. It's, in a way, it's like the football discussion has changed. So are you paying the premium that Barry Trotz would say, okay, let's do it? I mean, I think it's a high price. So I'm still dubious about that actually happening. But something's going to happen. There's going to be some folks out of here, I think, more than folks coming in. Keezer, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would, especially because a lot of the younger guys that are listed in the system – they can hit free agency if they don't tender their qualifying offer, essentially. And I can see that happening with a few guys for sure. Now, one guy I'm curious about is Juuso Parssinen, as I am also with Philip Tomasino, who, by the way, debuted last night with the Admirals, was a -2, worst on the team. So
thank you for our daily Admirals update.
Was telling Robby that last night. He's like, wow, he can't play at both levels. But anyway. So that was rough, but no, I do agree with that sentiment yesterday that the Predators will have younger guys that you will not see this fall. They are not going to be here. We will see guys from the draft, more or less. I would say this next rookie camp will be more of those latest players, and the guys that are due deals or got drafted and their rights are up, they will not be here. The Preds are going to do a lot of shaking up, I think.
Yeah, and I think it looks more and more likely there. All right, we come back on Robby and Rexrode. We're going to get into, first of all, I have to catch up on some takes, so we're going to get PK on some Super Bowl, then maybe a little bit of the goated QB discussion that we had yesterday.
We'll have a small,
see if he wants to yell at me about that,
small Valentine's Day announcement.
Oh, very exciting. Robby Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106 through the game, broadcasting from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville Studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round with some
Who's crying
Journey.
now? Journey.
Yeah, there we go. Oh,
you may
know
be
it.
familiar with my. It's larger than a pet peeve, but
Okay.
holiday sports programming.
Yep.
So Joe is in alignment with this. We will not be doing who is the love of your sports fan life or any such cheesy Valentine's Day program. It is available programming. It is available to you elsewhere, but you won't find it here. We'll find better stuff for you over the next 2 hours and 45 minutes that will be more enjoyable. And if you want people's Valentine's Day sports crushes, we're sorry to disappoint you.
Valentine's Day sports Mount Rushmore. Imagine that, like the hearts behind the heads. We do have a giveaway, though.
The giveaway is
We do
separate.
have a giveaway. Yeah, Kenny Chesney, Zach Brown. So that'll be later today. Nick Keyser's coming up with the question we have today. But,
Yeah, that's a Nick thing.
Yeah, it's a Nick thing. Yeah.
That's from
yeah,
the
we'll blame
production
it.
booth.
Yeah, we'll
over
blame it
there,
on Nick.
not
we'll blame it
from
on
the
Nick.
talent booth over here.
And then Nick will he'll also judge the winner there for those tickets. Okay, so let's get to first of all just the Super Bowl. You on the Super Bowl? What is your prevailing takeaway from the Super Bowl?
Yeah, there's a long, boring stretch of the Super Bowl. I don't know if we're allowed to say that.
Because
We're supposed to
complained
love every
immediately.
minute of the Super Bowl.
I complained immediately the next day. I'm like, I was terribly bored by most of that game.
Yeah. Look, it was, as I and most of us suspected, a matter of enduring Patrick Mahomes, and the 49ers couldn't do it. I think there's way too much Shanahan bashing going on based on the mistakes his players made. The punt, in particular, was an awful play, but they made too many mistakes.
Extra point block, that's a
to
killer.
survive. That was
That's a
killer.
different game without that.
I think analytics-wise, I've heard plenty of defenses of Shanahan's choice at the start of overtime, and there were plenty of scenarios where having the ball third would have been a huge advantage. His team's got to score a touchdown on the first possession. That's how it works with Mahomes. You have to keep pace. But they had a 4th and 1 where they could have stopped him and won the game. So having the ball third is not the worst case scenario there. And I think, the show before us, what's it called? I mean, they're just
Unsportsmanlike?
eviscerating Shanahan like his career's basically done in San Francisco, and you can't lose 2 Super Bowls in 5 years, and he's got to go somewhere else to maybe have success like Andy Reid did. Andy Reid was in Philadelphia for like 14 years.
Yeah.
Shanahan's got a lot of time. I don't know how the 49ers would figure they'd do better than Kyle Shanahan. Some coaches don't win. Dan Reeves didn't. But other coaches take a long time to break through, even in their one spot.
Sure.
And you can't do better than Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco right now. The NFC's wide open. I'm not saying the 49ers go back next year, but if you ask me the 3 teams in the best shape in the NFL, 49ers are absolutely one of them. This show's trying to make better cases for the Rams and the Packers and whatnot. It's ridiculous. The favorite in the NFC next year right now, and there's a ton that goes on between now and then in terms of player acquisition and everything, but if you ask me who's set up I like the best in the NFC right now, 49ers would be right at the top of the list.
Yeah, no, this was actually going to be my rant, but since we're on the Shanahan thing and unsportsmanlike, it was actually yesterday where I was like, I don't remember why I had to pivot, but I was like, this you can't be serious. Like they were talking about the overtime decision and framing it as he showed distrust in his own defense by going with the idea that they would get if they would get it third then they would score. If the whole idea that he said, which he said he went through this analytics people, is if you get it, if it's the same thing after the first 2 possessions, now you get the ball and it's sudden death. Go get a field goal. So now it becomes just like the old overtime rules. So, and they framed it as So he's saying that he just thinks that they're just going to give up a touchdown. A match is also neither team scores or both teams get a field goal. The point is there's a pretty good chance that it's equal. And then other people are screaming at him, well, the Chiefs were going to go for 2. Well, he doesn't know that. Did they share that information with him before the game? No. So, I mean, I see the case for the other way. It's close. The idea that it's some egregious – I mean, Chris Canady is talking about all-time coaching gaffes. All-time coaching gaffes?
No way.
What? What are the all-time – I mean, do we have to have hyperbole about everything?
Yes.
It just –
We do.
Like, some things are all-time bad. So let's talk about – everything isn't.
Yeah, you're watering down all-time bad by trying to lump this in as all-time bad, which it's not.
Unbelievable.
And look, the guy's had and this happens with some coaches. He's been part of 3 very unfortunate Super Bowl losses.
Well, look,
does that brand him as an all-time bad coach? No, because you got to get to those Super Bowls.
Exactly.
Now, maybe he
You gotta
overstated
blow
like
the
we're a
28-3
big
lead.
game team. Well, you're not a big game team if you get to the big game 3 times and you don't win it all 3 times. So I'd pull back a little bit on calling yourself a big game team.
Yeah,
Winning NFC championships is not what you set out to do when you get into this thing at the beginning of the season. That's not what you're writing up as the goal on the big board. But I feel pretty comfortable about Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, look, I also feel like, it's like framed. He's blown 10-point, double digits. Okay, this game was 10-0 early. It was 10-0. I mean, this is not 28-3. That's
a big deal.
And he, there are a couple decisions in that game where you win if you just make the other decision.
But
that
10
was bad.
points is not a big lead
early
in the NFL.
10-0 lead. I mean, it's just.
And not just against Mahomes, against anybody. Lots of teams close 10-point leads in today's NFL, especially
course.
early, like you're talking about.
Well, absolutely. Okay, so I want to see if you want to scream at me. People got really pissed at me, PK. They were calling me Stilly. They were calling me Stilly Jr. First of all,
well, you called for somebody to be fired after something
no, nothing like
slightly
that.
bad?
No, I claim that Steve Young is a better quarterback than Joe Montana. And
I think it's arguable. What is your Montana thing, though? I've heard a lot of Fouts and Montana stuff peripherally.
Yeah, I mean, the Fouts thing is I love Dan Fouts. He made my 10th quarterback of all time. I mean, that's kind of jokish. He is a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's a great quarterback. He's not at the same level. But my whole thing is Joe Montana, and I feel like let's rip unsportsmanlike, but Chris Canty said, well, the clear best 2 of all time, Brady and Montana. And that's it. Nobody – and because of 4 rings. And if it's just ring counting to do these evaluations, that bothers the hell out of me. I think John Elway was flat out a better player than Joe Montana. That's my opinion. It's subjective. If Dan Marino's in the exact same spot that Joe Montana's in with that offense and Bill Walsh and Jerry Rice and blah, 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 then Dan Marino wins 4 rings.
Here's my argument against you. You can't do all of this trading of circumstances. You get the circumstances you get.
That's fine.
And you can't score Joe Montana down for landing with Bill Walsh and
I'm not
Jerry
scoring him
Rice.
down. I'm just saying if it's just going to be about the ring counting, then Dan Marino's nowhere on anyone's list. He has none.
Okay. Well,
That's stupid.
It's not just about ring counting. I mean, but you can't discount
I'm not discounting rings
Montana
either.
for winning his rings. So he was a phenomenal quarterback who landed in phenomenal circumstances, and you can't take that away from him.
I agree, but do you put him at this totally different level than Marino, Elway, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers because he has more rings than them?
They're all in a
That's
big
my
basket.
argument.
But
That's my argument.
he certainly ranks very highly.
Sure.
And when you get into tie-breaking scenarios, I do give him a little bit of an edge over some people because he happened to land in phenomenal circumstances. And Peyton Manning was in phenomenal circumstances, and he only won 2. And the second one was not really of his doing.
Well, and I think that, and I agree. I think with Peyton Manning, he had a little bit of the issue of some of these guys now with Patrick Mahomes being in their way, right? I mean, that was part of it. He lost to Brady a couple times, right? Where That's probably a championship team. So right,
Sure, but they were cast largely
But Montana
as
didn't have that
equals.
guy. Montana didn't have that guy.
Well, it's not-
Montana
again,
had
it's-
1 year with the '85 Bears, and then you had 1 year with the Giants, where they were the dominant team. Right, like Washington pops in there.
Again, circumstances that
Sure.
not his fault. I say this in the Hall of Fame selection committee room, name drop. I'm not scoring anybody down for their circumstances, and
That's
I'm
fair.
not generally scoring people up for their bad circumstances unless I get into a tiebreaker situation. So then if we're talking Andre Johnson, Torrey Holt, and Reggie Wayne, I just on pure ability, I think Andre Johnson is a touch better than those guys. But then if you get into looking at Andre Johnson never had a good quarterback.
Yeah.
And Andre Johnson didn't play with another Hall of Fame guy.
Okay. So you're kind of on my page
as
then.
his Batman/Robin. This is as a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
So you look at Wayne, and he played with Harrison, and Peyton Manning was
Edgerrin
throwing
James,
to him.
and yeah.
And you look at Holt, and Kurt Warner, Hall of Fame
And that
quarterback, is
offense
throwing
at the
to him, and he
time
had
was-
Isaac Bruce.
Yes.
Well, then those things,
Marshall
I'm not
Faulk.
penalizing those guys for their circumstances. But if I need to sort through the three, my leading vote there was to Andre Johnson because, to me, he did more with less.
Yeah.
That's in a tie-breaking situation. I don't have to tie break with Montana, and I think you're downgrading Montana
Yeah,
too much.
but like Steve Young and Montana, 4 versus 1. I watched them both play. I think Steve Young's better, but I mean, 4 versus 1. Some people are like 4 versus 1. Who cares? Like that's it, and I don't think that's it.
I don't know. Here's my thing. You're falling into here's where you're falling into Stilly. Like, did somebody force you to rank Young versus Montana? Or are you clickbaity being like, coming up next, I've got a controversial take about all-time great 49er quarterbacks. You're not going to want to miss this. Listen in. It's a hot take. So hot, you're going to burn yourself. Next on 102.5 The Game.
No, it was not that. It was basically this is all originated from me angry at the clearly Montana is right there above all those other guys because of the rings. 4-0 now. But I like that intro, though. I'm going to have to use that. All right, we come back. Choice is yours. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
or that, this or that.
We all have choices to make.
This or that, this or that.
Like right now.
Come on.
It's The Choice Is Yours, built by Jarrett Companies. You have a choice, so when you have a need for site and utility work, fire protection, concrete and asphalt services, the choice is simple. It's Jarrett Companies. For more, visit JarrettCompaniesInc.com.
Come on.
The choice is yours, now on Robby and Rexrode.
And it is that time of the week, folks. Choice is yours, brought to you by Jarrett Companies Fire, Commercial Plumbing, HVAC Division, 615-515-1270, JarrettCompaniesInc.com. Nick Keyser in the question share today. I hope you're giving PK some love of your sports life choices today. But it's your show.
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
That's
on that
that's
theme.
a scary, scary proposition.
Sports or non-sports, PK?
We just rotate through?
Yeah.
Non-sports.
Okay.
Non-sports. Love. More about love.
Well,
Yeah, don't make it Valentine's, though.
not about that specifically, but on this day,
So about that specifically, but I'm going to work around it.
on this day, what is your candy of choice if someone had to give you a gift basket?
So are you saying then your Valentine's specific? Because basically when I think of Valentine's candy, I think obviously like chocolates.
Yes.
The heart with the chocolates. And I like the little hearts, like the little messages. There's some funny little messages, but the candy themselves are crap.
The
right?
ones that
Candy's
that
crap.
kind of like they all taste like chalk.
Yeah,
right?
so basically if you can find me a heart-shaped Reese's cup type thing, because I don't care what shape you put Reese's cup in, I'm going to devour it. That's basically my answer.
I'm going to take a milk chocolate with a caramel inside.
yeah,
Okay.
that is my choice. But the Ghirardelli ones, PK,
Ghirardelli, yeah.
those are really good.
It is Ghirardelli, right? Not Ghirardelli. Is it
Ghirardelli.
Ghirardelli? It's Ghirardelli.
I don't know. I just pronounce it as close
There
as I
you go.
can.
Well, now
but
you
there
got it.
go.
Well, now you know. It's
I've been there
Ghirardelli.
before.
We're
I have
gonna
been
culture
there.
you
So
up.
have I. The right in San Fran.
San
right?
Fran,
Yeah.
right on.
Yep.
Right on the coastline. Yep.
Yep.
Really cool place. So in sports, I would be curious to hear this. I don't think I've asked this one before, Joe. If you had to coach a sport, doesn't have to be pro sport, could be any level as well. What would it be? You could be an assistant. You could be someone that is around, like as like a unpaid
Get
person
that coach
as
Gopher?
well. Sure.
Butch Jones doing Nick Saban's laundry.
Yeah.
I can do any of those.
Any
Okay.
type of coach. What would you be?
Yeah, I mean, I would coach basketball. I mean, I would love to be a basketball coach. Sometimes I wish I would have been a basketball coach. So,
What level?
well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess.
I mean, are we making ourselves fantasy level good at
Well,
this?
yeah, exactly. I mean, sure. I mean, if I went back and went the grad route, manager in college, and
Washed
then
underwear?
well, sure, and then do video, assistant video, and then who knows where it goes. But I would love it's basketball. Yeah, that's what I know. So I don't know. I've coached a little bit of youth. Yeah, my playbook maybe a little bit too complex for the kids, but that's what I would like to do.
Mine's baseball for sure, and I sometimes think about finding a 12-year-old team after Simon's off to college, hopefully. But then I think about sacrificing weekends to go to tournaments and stuff like that.
And
And
there's
I'm like,
so many games.
why the hell would you do? And having parents nag me about playing time.
Oh yeah.
But I tell you, my team would charge every ground ball and show me the button on the top of their cap, watching it go into their gloves, and take appropriate leads and not fiddle with the Velcro on their sliding gloves, which they wouldn't wear, and stuff like that. That drives me crazy.
I like the
and that'd be
discipline.
a better generation of one team of 10 or 12-year-olds going into 13U.
I'd like to add to that real quick before we go to you, Nick. My team will be boxing out. They're not watching the ball when it goes up. They're going to find a body, and they're going to go get the ball.
Dennis
Dan.
Rodman style.
Watching these players now, just watch the ball. Put your body on someone, and then go get the ball. All right.
So,
Nick?
PK, what I'm hearing is Little League World Series the next 10 years or so for you coaching that, possibly.
Well, the Nolansville guy did get squeezed out, but I imagine they'll find somebody else well before I'm available.
So you're campaigning. Okay.
Gotcha. I would obviously coach hockey, but I would also like baseball as well. Baseball was
Just pick one.
was a
You
later
can't have
love.
two.
I will pick hockey. Everybody's picked something different.
Are you a good skater? Because I'm not picturing you on skates.
PK, I played hockey for 20 years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But you're 19 years old.
No, I'm 25.
How
There
would
you go.
How does he not look like a good skater? I mean, I'm curious. Like, how would you be able?
Yeah,
to
how do you
figure
judge
Just
that
that
look
out?
at
physically?
people and
Okay.
judge,
Yeah.
and skater, non-skater.
What do you think? Me, skater, non-skater?
Non-skater.
Yeah. Well, you're right about that.
I played defense. I can skate backwards probably faster than any of you guys can skate forward. So there you go.
Oh, in your face. All right.
All right, our next non-sports, getting a little sentimental because it is Valentine's Day. Wanted
We
to
don't
phrase
want
this a
a
little
Valentine-
different.
I promised no Valentine's Day content.
Well, you can't
You weren't
promise
listening.
it. All right, Joe, we'll start with you then. What's the most sentimental thing that you have gotten for maybe Katie or just anything that you can go back in life and go on, that was a damn good gift?
The most sentimental gift given to my wife or to anybody? I mean, can I go back to like
Preferably-
my college girlfriends or no.
Preferably Katie.
God. This. First of all, the running joke of my family is how bad I am as a gift giver. But I tell you what. Right now, I've given her the gift. The gift this week
Of
is that
marriage.
we're going. Well, that's of me, which is we're going to Vegas to see U2, which is
In the Sphere?
In the Sphere. So I mean, I think that I'm going to go right now with this gift. I think it's pretty good, man. I think it's a pretty good
No,
gift.
Nick, he found the one show U2's playing outside of the Sphere
yeah.
in Vegas, and they're
You
going
never
to
know.
that.
They go
just
to
asking.
they go to
Little club
dive
show.
bars. They go to dive bars sometimes in costumes. We know where they're going to be. So yeah, I'm going to go with that one. I think that we're big concert people, so that is to us that's kind of like the sacred sentimental stuff.
I'm a terrible gift giver, and it's gotten worse, of course, with time, which I think is the case with a lot of marriages. I proposed on a Scrabble board, and for our first anniversary, I made like a crossword puzzle as the paper gift. So I thought that was
Oh
pretty
my God, you are such a sap.
All
Such
down-
a
all
sap.
downhill from
Where
me.
did that inspiration come from?
We used to play a lot of Scrabble, and then we were out on a Friday night when I was planning to propose and had reservations, and I'm like, let's just go home and play Scrabble. And she's like, no, I feel like I've really been a bummer lately, working so hard and us staying in. Let's stay out. And I was like, no, let's go home.
No, really, Scrabble. Come on.
Because like we had the fancy board, that the tiles stay in the slots, and so I had it on the board. I needed her to take it.
Did
out
you also
of the
put
box.
like quince or something on there to get like extra points with it? Like,
No,
will
but I
you
had
marry me
I
and
had
eat a quince?
I had a question mark made, the whole thing.
I
But I
gotcha.
needed to get home so we would get in the game so I could ask and give her the
My
ring, and
God,
then we
you're
could get dressed
what a
and go out.
Casanova. Look, you're bitching about Valentine's content. Look at the Valentine's
That's not
content you're providing.
Valentine's. That's-
You're providing love
That's
content.
not Valentine's Day
Ah,
content. That's
just
my
gorgeous.
engagement story.
Yeah, but that's
Beautiful.
yeah,
Just
but that's
beautiful.
the most romantic I've ever heard you talk, PK. So that's
when
awesome.
are you and
I'm
I
about
ever
to shed
talking
a-
romance, Nick?
I'm going to shed a tear. This
No,
is so
not
beautiful.
that we would, but that's a great answer. That's a great story.
Exactly.
Thank you for sharing.
Embrace
PK.
your embrace of love.
There you go. Last question. I'll just go ahead
she's
and
at
move
home
on.
scowling right now.
I hope she's listening. I really do.
I'll do our last question, but my short answer to that is I wrote a poem for Kristen right before we got engaged.
my
So there you go. It's
We need to
framed.
see this
You are
poem.
going to read
Tweet
this on
out
the air.
this poem.
You are going to read that on the air at some point.
Maybe.
Roses
we'll see.
are red.
It's all
Go ahead.
good.
Last question.
Last
Let's
question.
go.
Really simple. Who was your sports idol as a young boy?
Greg Nettles, number 9, New York Yankees. Phenomenal defender, power hitter who's underrated. His value has gone up as analytics have taken over. That he's like borderline Hall of Fame talent, which I never thought he was. But I love him. He is my foundational athlete in my life.
Well, same answer for me. Isaiah Thomas, number 11, Detroit Pistons.
Very
Enough
nice.
Way to
said.
pick an unpopular guy.
That's fine.
Very
He's
cool.
my hero.
Homer.
Mine would be Pecorine, just based on his pure leadership and just the way that he exemplified being a person. I think that was above and beyond what stood out to me about him growing up and then getting to meet him a few times. That always stood out to me, and I hoped that I would be a man like that one day. So there you go.
That's too much. Look for people who exemplify being a person in your life, and look for your sports guys to be sports guys.
Some sports guys are good people,
Yeah.
though.
The question was when I was
no.
a boy, though, too. So
There should be no
That is
statue
fair.
of him. I don't want to get into that, but
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, it's
ridiculous.
Okay.
You can complain about that coming up next if you want. We can erase all your beautiful love talk and get into breaking down the Pecorine statue.
Hey, people
I
say
was
it's
going to
not
talk
that
about the new staff on the Titans. We may have to deal with this, though, too. Coming up next, Robby Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 93.3 Classic Hits tomorrow's MTSU basketball takes on New Mexico State at home. Pregame 6 p.m., tip-off 6:30 with coverage also available on 93.3 Classic Hits app and at 93.3classichits.com. Welcome back in, Robby and Rex. All right, we're going to get to the Titans and the staff, and you broke some news last night, PK, about former Titan staffers as well. But what the hell's your problem with the Pecorine statue?
Statues are for, like, all-time greats. All-time
He's the greatest
greats.
player in franchise history.
And then there's no hurry to put up a statue. It's a complete marketing ploy. You wait. Like, is he a Hall of Famer? If he's a Hall of Famer, then you wait for him to get in the Hall of Fame. Then you put it up. You let time pass.
Hey, Bama
But
put
what
up,
they
put up
do
a
is
statue
put it up,
like 10 weeks after Nick Saban arrived. What do you want,
I'm
man?
against that, too. You wait. But what they do is get it up immediately so there's something for people to take a picture with in front of their thing. It's forced history for a team that doesn't have that much to celebrate.
Well, okay. I don't totally disagree with the waiting thing and a little bit after someone's career is done. Yeah, I can buy that. But as far as not a lot of history, Pecorine is worth celebrating. I mean, we'll see about the Hall of Fame with him, but we're talking about a Vezina winner and the great. I mean, you're talking about a franchise that's been around a quarter century, and he's the greatest player. I think that's. Eventually at some point you'll have a few, you hope, right? I mean, but you're going to have him.
I like my statue guys, and I like Pecorine plenty. I mean, he's fantastic. But to me, a statue guy is a guy that, like, won championships, plural. That's like an all-time great. Not in your franchise, in the league.
Okay. So if your franchise isn't successful, then you should not celebrate yourself.
No, not with statues.
Okay.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, now that we cleared that up, Titans staff, Brian Callahan. What are your? It's basically finalized. Basically special teams coach.
Special teams coach and a replacement
Still
for the
not there.
strength and conditioning director of sports performance.
So let's get into that because you tell me. Did you report first, Frank Pirano?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I wasn't paying attention, quite frankly.
Well, who
And
did?
so
Credit who did.
I think ESPN.
Okay.
That had it first, that he
TD?
was going to the Giants. But, I mean, I think I was the one that emphasized that he was not on the list. TD jointly reported it with Jordan Raanan, I think.
Okay, so
that he was going to the Giants. But first, he was not on the Titans list.
Which is interesting.
I
So
was
he's out.
jumping all over that, but his staff stayed.
But his staff stays.
Well, his
so
staff
what
has
is that?
to stay because they have to have somebody running the weight room for
Yeah.
guys who are working there. So I imagine his replacement then gets to judge those three people.
And so those three
Odds
people-
are they keep one of them
Yeah.
at least, and then
Probably
his
change out at least
replacement
one or
brings-
two.
Brings people.
Okay.
On the staff, I think the offensive staff is pretty impressive. I mean, obviously, his father as offensive line coach, Bill Callahan, is impressive. Tyke Tolbert, has a lot of rave reviews as a wide receiver coach and has done some things. Justin Outen, who was with him as running backs coach last year, was being talked about as an offensive coordinator candidate, moves back to tight ends where he had worked some in the past and is a holdover. Randy Jordan from the Commanders as a running back coach has a big reputation and is viewed as kind of up and comer. Bo Hardegree, people know from his connection with Tennessee, and he's worked with a long list of quarterbacks. Not all of them good, but I think it's good that he's worked with a wide variety of quarterbacks, including Jay Cutler, Ryan Tannehill, Aiden O'Connell. He's touched on a whole different array of skill
variety.
set, right?
Yeah.
I think that the defensive staff doesn't impress me in the same way. You've got two major retreads there who were part of Mike Munchak's staff, and Mike Munchak's staff was what killed Mike Munchak.
Them in particular?
No, not them in
Yeah.
particular, but overall. Tracy Rocker has had 8 jobs since 2008 and been nowhere for more than 3 years. Ole Miss for 1 season, Auburn for 3, here for 3, Georgia for 3, UT for 3, South Carolina for 1, the Eagles for 3. Nobody's in love with Tracy Rocker. He's a nomad. I thought he was, when I watched him work, a college coach. And I talked to Blake Bedingfield about him. We thought he was good here. and is very much a teacher, and that you need teachers now.
I mean, that
more
spot in
than-
particular
more
with
than
Terrell,
ever.
with Terrell Williams moving on, that's a loss. I mean,
But that's a
they
down.
lost a
Yeah,
really good D-line coach who
That's a
benefit
downgrade.
to the Lions.
I think keeping Chris Harris as cornerbacks coach and defensive pass game coordinator is a get. Steve Jackson I like a lot personally. I'm probably biased there. I covered him as a player. He was a terrific guy to cover as a player. He's been here also. He was on Malarkey's staff. So I like him as a safeties guy, but I'm probably not seeing that from the completely fair, unbiased perspective. I admit it.
Okay, but if you but if you have an impression of somebody,
Yeah,
that
my impression of him
matters.
is good. Inside linebacker Frank Bush. This is his third time here. I mean, so I'm looking at Rocker and Bush and saying the second time, third time. Jackson is his second time too. You're retreading a ton of guys. Where are the young? Now you've got a young coordinator, so you're getting more experienced position coaches, but you can't go get new, fresh guys who haven't been here before. Two of them on a bad staff. I'm a little disappointed by that. Ben Bloom, outside linebackers coach. He had 3 jobs in 4 years with Cleveland. He was on an up and down thing on Jason Garrett's staff in Dallas, where he'd move up a peg, but then he'd move down a peg, but then he'd move up a peg. And it seems like he was a little unsteady to me in terms of his track. It wasn't all upward, so to speak. So I'm curious about what happened there. I don't know much about him. But I feel a lot better about the offensive side of the ball, which is Brian Callahan's side of the ball, than I do about the defensive side of the ball. But, it's all measured with we have to see him on the field with guys and have to talk to them and get a sense of what they're like. No special teams coordinator yet. I'm fine with them taking their time there. If they could find somebody who's significantly better than Craig Aukerman was. Tom Quinn was the quick replacement there, and he's out.
There you go. There's the thumbnail. We'll get more into that later, too. But coming up next, Robby and Rexrode, we're going to have Charles Robinson on a different day here talking NFL. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. All right, second hour here on Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode, proudly sponsored by Chuck McDowell Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser producing, Robby Stanley off today, PK, Paul Kaharski in for him. And we've also audibled this week with Charles Robinson, who tells me he's on a plane tomorrow during his normal time. So today we're getting Charles. So, Charles, you haven't just been hanging out in Vegas for 4 extra days, right? I mean, if you have, I got mad respect for that. Mad respect if that's the case.
No, I did stay an extra day because I foolishly waited until a week before the Super Bowl to book a ticket, and flying in was because you go in a full week before. I think flying in was $200, and then flying out was $1,000. And so I got why did you wait so long to book your flight out? So I ended up staying an extra day, and I actually flew out yesterday afternoon because it was significantly cheaper. But I swear I just slept most of Tuesday. Vegas Super Bowl. I expect it will end up in the rotation, the league's rotation. I always feel like there's a rotation of cities where they would like to visit most, and to me, it's Miami, New Orleans. Used to be San Diego. Obviously, it's not anymore. But LA, I think, is one, and I think they'll probably punch Las Vegas in there just because of I think the popularity of the game, the number of people who showed up. The sports books did really well. I think the casinos weren't super happy because NFL fans who show up, it's a different kind of a betting crowd. You don't have a ton of people hitting the blackjack tables. Instead, they all hit the sports books, so it's sort of a different type of profit for casinos. But I think all in all, they felt pretty good about how the Las Vegas Super Bowl went. Actually, interestingly enough, and I don't think anybody's reported this, most expensive average ticket in the history of the Super Bowl. I got the data yesterday from a couple of different places, and it ended up being the most expensive average ticket in the history of the Super Bowl. I want to say $9,000, between $9,000 and $10,000. So it was an insanely expensive Super Bowl to get into. The week itself was interesting. If you were there, when you hit Friday, Vegas was gridlock. It was like a parking lot. It was crazy. You couldn't go anywhere. I had to get to a site that was about a mile away from my hotel on Saturday, and I didn't have a lot of time, so I jumped in an Uber, and it said 13 minutes, right? It was an hour and 10 minutes in an Uber to go a mile. And I was like, yeah, we could have figured out the transit a little bit better. But all in all, I think it went pretty well for Vegas. And, from an entertainment value standpoint, I think people had a lot of fun. And then if you get an overtime game in the Super Bowl, nobody's complaining about that.
Well, real quick before we get to the game, Charles, you're talking about the rotation. I personally fully expect, but I don't know, that down the road here, as they build this new stadium here, that Nashville is going to be not just a place that gets a Super Bowl, but I think a place that, and I'd like your thoughts too, PK, a place that'll be in that rotation too somewhat regularly. You guys agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's another city but as you said, it depends on infrastructure, but you get a new stadium and then it's a game changer, I think, for Nashville, but it fits the template. They don't want, when it comes to the Super Bowl, they don't want to have a bunch of cities in there where it's going to be inclement weather, problems, things like that. I think as long as you can illustrate that, A, you're willing to lean into infrastructure, which is to have a new stadium, B, you can figure out the transit, and, C, there's enough opportunity to spread it out a little bit. That was the one thing about Vegas, is very compact, which was interesting. And in some ways that's good, but then you kind of have the gridlock from a travel standpoint. I don't think they're overly worried about that, especially if the entertainment options are there and the partnership options are there. Whereas, Nashville, look, the draft, I think that, to me, they look at the draft experience in Nashville and they're like, God, that was great. Right. It's one of the best drafts in the history of the game. Weirdly enough, I think the draft's travel ability is, I don't want to say they factored in massively, but I think they do look at the draft and they're like, look, we can plan a draft somewhere and it goes really, really well. Why not consider that potentially being a Super Bowl rotation city if, again, the sort of location and the weather aspects really fit? They don't want to do a lot of, having been in the Minneapolis Super Bowl, I can tell you the Minneapolis Super Bowl, when it was in New York a few years ago, even like Dallas.
Well, they lucked out New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they did, right. New York, they lucked out. But I think they're smart enough to know that those are sort of the one-offs. They don't want to do that a ton. They really want to have a consistent rotation of, five, maybe six max, and then occasionally still leverage moving it into cities for certain reasons. They use, obviously, infrastructure. It's still the carrot, I think, for a lot of cities and ownership groups that, hey, if you're willing to build a new stadium or, do the things that we feel are necessary to make you a top tier, a top echelon, team during a regular season and over a period of decades, we're willing to sprinkle in a Super Bowl now and then. Which is why, by the way, you're going to see Dallas, you're going to see LA, between Stan Kroenke and Jerry Jones. They're constantly harping on the league. Let's make sure we're getting a Super Bowl every, 5, 6, 7 years.
I think 70% of the people in Nashville could be within 2 miles and be foot traffic. But I think if you're in the 30% that's outside, it'd be a hellish experience. So, I think that's a win. For those 70%, it'd be phenomenal.
I agree.
Yeah. The draft was amazing.
Yeah, it's a trade-off. It really is. It's look, even the Vegas one, the team hotels were like 25 miles off the strip, and it was funny because we all kind of initially complained about it, and then once we kind of saw what the traffic situation was going to be as the week progressed, I was like, oh, I get this. Like you don't want this situation with teams anywhere near the strip or, needing to go anywhere near the strip after pretty much Wednesday of the week. It was pretty awful. But as you said, having that ability to be within 2 miles of really where everything's going on, I actually decided that Saturday after I dropped things off, I was like, all right, you know what? It took me an hour and 10 minutes to drop this off, and go to this other casino. I was like, I'll just walk it myself the way back. And I think it was 1.4 miles I walked. But it gave me the ability to see, okay, let me see how fans are getting around. It was insane. There was a gazillion fans. Everybody was walking it. Everybody was on the strip. Everybody was going in and out of, hotels, every other thing there. And that to me was really the illustration of where it had gone right, because almost everybody inside of like a 1 square mile radius was on foot, and they were going in and out of everywhere nonstop from basically, the break of dawn on Saturday until the game on Sunday. It couldn't have gone any better for Vegas.
So quickly, just your biggest takeaways from this game, like maybe the 3 biggest things, because obviously, I've been annoyed with a lot of this Shanahan discourse this week, which I think is hyperbolic as hell, and we can get into that a bit later. But what's the big 2-3 things that you take from this?
Well, first off, Reed coming out afterward and saying he's not going anywhere. That the whole week we talked about this. He wouldn't really answer the question. I think for this to hold together for Kansas City, because we talk about Mahomes and the Brady chase and like how much can the Chiefs maximize this? As much as it is, let's see how long Mahomes and Kelsey can stay together. Well, it's definitely Reed and Mahomes. How long can these two guys stay together? And I would look at the last play of the game where they run that corn dog formation again, which is the same thing they ran last year against Philly. There are little slight alterations, but Reed basically saying, we're going to go back to a play we used last year, which is basically a motion with a wide receiver that forces DBs to change coverage at the last second and then take advantage of that and confuse them. That's really why they scored a touchdown and won the game at the end, running the same play that they had the year before. And it, in a weird way, shows, not even a weird way, it just shows the genius of Reed saying, hey, this worked. You know, we're in a pressure situation. The Niners probably are not thinking about this in this moment. And, you know, so I think one was Reed saying he was coming back. I think number two, to me, over the course of the week, it was just how Mahomes was. Like, I'm like, the whole week he seemed bored. Like, I don't, like, not in a negative way, just like I've been here so many times. Like, if I'm not here, I'm in the AFC title game. Like, it just was not too big for him at any point. And you're like, wow, already? He's sort of at this weird Brady moment where it's just like, all right, come on, let's get to the game. Like, I know, yeah, it's a Super Bowl. I'm always here. I feel like I'm always here. It's just such a tremendous advantage, I think, for the Chiefs. And then, you know, as you said, the 49ers, we can talk about this later. I thought what stuck out is just sort of seeing Kyle Shanahan once again in these situations to make decisions and not necessarily knowing whether or not he's going to make the right decisions or not, and how that reflects against the Chiefs, where I just think they're in this mode so often that we should talk about roster attrition with them. But if roster attrition doesn't strike them down, there's no reason to feel like the Chiefs are going to fall flat on their face unless something weirdly and unexpectedly catastrophic happens to a Patrick Mahomes, to a Steve Spagnuolo, to an Andy Reid. I hate to say it, but I almost feel like the Chiefs are better set up for continued dominance than even the Patriots were when they had the 10-year gap for Brady after he won his third. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this offseason moving forward. But it's hard for me to continue to question them after this was clearly their toughest situation, their toughest roster to deal with, and yet you look at who they beat, Miami, Baltimore, San Francisco to win this title. It's just a joke.
We'll be back with more from Charles Robinson, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tomorrow night. Vanderbilt women's basketball takes on Texas A&M on the road. Pre-game 7:45, tip-off at 8 with coverage also available on 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode. We got Charles Robinson for another segment. Paul Kaharski, you have a question?
Not that the summer won't be filled with the share of Jordan versus LeBron conversation, but will Brady versus Mahomes edge in on it now?
I think it should. I think it's a worthy conversation now. He had to win his third in 6 years as a starter, and it's funny to me that everyone makes the comparison to Jordan. Oh, he's Jordan. Mahomes is Jordan. But to me, the way I looked at it, I even wrote this. I said, this feels to me like Tiger and Jack Nicklaus, right? Like Brady wins that seventh, and it's like he's Nicklaus, with what was it, 18 majors, and you're like, that's some, uncatchable. There's no way anybody's ever going to be able to do that. And then Tiger came out of the gate and just won so many in his first few years as a professional, and that's how I look at Mahomes. I'm like, this guy came out of the gate. It's insane, the fire that he had. Now, that said, he wins his third, a little over 28 years old. I think Tom won his third a little over 27, like 28.5 versus 27.5, something like that. And then what happened was Tom had that big, huge gap year where you saw and it was for multiple reasons. Obviously, he had the knee injury, but there were a lot of assistants that were hired away. Everybody dove in on the Patriots program and started pulling out players. They started pulling out assistant coaches. They didn't have the greatest offensive drafts for a period there. There were a lot of different reasons why Tom had sort of that decade gap of, not winning a title. And that's the challenge now. I think for Mahomes, it's the challenge now for Kansas City to lose players, lose coaches, and figure out how to adapt to it. Now, Chris Jones, right? You're probably going to lose a transformative defensive tackle who's probably got a couple years of prime left. I think on the market, there's going to be some teams this offseason that'll say, hey, you know what? 3 years of guaranteed money for that guy. $75 million. Dollars that we're looking at committing to him over that span, guaranteed. You lose him. I think you got a multitude of other guys, Willie Gay. I mean, there's a few others. They'll probably keep L'Jarius Sneed, the corner. They got to make some decisions here, basically, to keep some guys and let some guys go. And then Kelsey, after the game, interestingly enough, he talked about, you got asked about, coming back next year. There's been some, beyond just the Reed rumors of like, is he going to, come back? There's also been some talk about maybe Kelsey getting to the point where he's starting to think about the end of his career. He wouldn't commit to it. I wouldn't put a ton into that, but I think it's interesting that he I actually asked, I was the one who asked Reed, I was like, you coming back next year? And he's like, well, yeah, he's had the qualifier. I haven't really thought about it yet, but yeah, I'm going to be back. And, Kelsey didn't even give that. So you start to think about, all right, when Mahomes gets coaches taken away from him, eventually at some point Reed, when he gets players taken away from him at some point Kelsey, what's the adjustment ultimately look like? And that's going to factor into the Brady, conversation. It's still, even 3-6, it's still extremely hard to win a whole second Montana career, right? Win 4 more Super Bowls just to tie Brady. And let's extend it out. Let's say he's going to play until he's 40. Okay, well, that's 4 and 12 years. It's pretty hard. Anybody who wins 4 and 12 years, you're like, okay, that's a Hall of Fame career. He's already had a Hall of Fame career in 3 and 6. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see, whether they can keep it together. But I'll tell you what, the pressure is on their personnel department now. The pressure's on, the cap guys now, because they're going to have to deal with a contract that's not as bad as it could potentially be moving forward with him. I think he'll be one of those give back guys where he'll adjust along the way to add talent, but it will never be on the level of Brady, where probably the most undersold piece of Brady's story over the course of his career was that he rarely, if ever, maximized the amount of money he could make, and that allowed them to keep a lot of talent. Even with Patrick Mahomes being a give back guy, it's never going to be on the level of Brady.
Yeah, and I think Mahomes. Mahomes. If Mahomes is this excellent and he wins like 5 or whatever, he still will have a clean. This is my whole. We won't even get into it, but like the whole Montana is clearly like top 3 because he has the 4 rings. I reject out of hand, but we don't need to get.
It never gets to Jordan because Jordan didn't lose in the title.
Well, Montana didn't either.
Right. So
Jordan also had easier competitors in the 90s than the great teams of the dynasties of the 80s. So,
right, but that's why Brady to me
which
isn't
beat the
in a
crap out of Jordan, by the way,
conversation.
in his prime. I mean, we don't need to do this, but we could do this.
Yeah. Okay, we can. Again, and it makes honestly, it's the phone lines usually light up when you start talking about any of these guys and comparing them. But again, like to me, that's why I go back to Tiger and Jack.
That's a
Remember,
good. I
when
like
Tiger
that
came out the
comparison.
gate,
I like that.
We were like, he's gonna do it. He's gonna make this run. Like it was so clear it was gonna happen. And then what happened? He got a little older.
Personal stuff mostly, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, other things set in. Like there was a lot, like, hey, next thing you know, they're like the windows of an SUV are getting smashed out by golf clubs. There's like a whole other side of like what happens down the stretch. Physically, he changes, right? He becomes a bigger guy. There's more torque in his swing. All of a sudden, he's having knee troubles, back troubles. That's why Brady is so crazy, because when you look at the expanse of his career, he played forever and really only had 1 year that was dinged by health when he had the knee injury, which changed how quarterbacks were officiated in, hits below the knee. And it's just so rare to see any player last that long. And by the way, another thing too, financially, I'll bet by the time he's 35, Patrick Mahomes will be, his net worth on and off the field together might be $1 billion by the time he's 35. And I truly believe that does factor into how players kind of look at themselves in the game, because as it starts to wear on and you have all that money in the bank, you're like, how much longer am I going to put my body through this? And what am I really chasing? And it just becomes harder to chase that. But I'm with you guys when you talk about Jordan and just, the overall dominance of Jordan because of the era he did it, the fact that he never really lost one, the fact that he took, there was time in the middle where, he dropped out. Now, let's be honest, I don't think the Rockets win those 2 titles if Jordan stays in the league those 2 years. But even when we watched The Last Dance, we saw the pressures that happen late in your career with teammates disagreeing, just the overall grind of it, mentally the toll that it takes. As hard as it is in the NBA, I think it's even harder in the NFL because you have so many other players on that roster, so many other teams, and then a league that I think even more than the NBA is just hell-driven at disassembling dominance. Like every single year, you go into an off season where you just want people taken off of a championship roster to try and force that team back in the middle.
Michael Jordan 1-3 in playoff series against the Detroit Pistons, for the record.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's right. All right, real fast, Charles, to close here. Kyle Shanahan, the overtime thing. I'm here. People are sitting here talking about like amazing coaching gas, all this stuff. By every angle I can see it, it's a very 50-50 proposition. But I don't know. Is he taking too much crap?
I think he's taking too much crap from the standpoint of, like, I talked to somebody on their staff on Monday, and it was clear, even though Shanahan ducked it, like their defense was really gassed. And this guy was like, look, he's like, go back and look at it. He was like, Bosa was completely gassed at the end of the game. He's like, we had multiple guys who were just wiped out. And he's like, look, if the analytics, it's close enough at that point, you don't want to throw those guys back on the field against Mahomes in that situation and basically feel like there's a really high percentage chance we're going to have to match a touchdown at this stage. So let's get out in front of it, keep the defense off the field. And then, obviously, ideally, they would have scored a touchdown on that first drive. But, I think people are underplaying the time that they were able to rest the defense in that scenario. And I get the straight up analytics, aspect of it. I get the idea of knowing what you're going for by taking it second in overtime. The Chiefs score a touchdown, then, okay, now you have to score a touchdown to match it. I understand all that, but I do think there's an in-game decision that has to be made, and maybe people aren't. And by the way, Shanahan also could have come out after the game and been like, look, I get all the analytics, guys, but we have human beings on that defense. It had been a tremendously, difficult run down the stretch for those guys, and we wanted to give them as much of a blow as possible. He didn't do that to take heat off of himself. He pretty much did the opposite. So he deals with it in the wake of it. But it is what it is. I think he can be criticized on one hand. I think we're being realistic on the other hand too, and understanding the game. The percentages were probably a lot closer than people want to say, and it's Mahomes too. Like that's the crazy thing is like how many times is this guy? Sean McDermott's going to be on the hot seat because of Mahomes. I don't think Shanahan's going to be on the hot seat, but he's going to hear a lot, next year because of Mahomes. Like this is going to be again sort of like the Jordan effect, where how many people should have won titles or were in position to win titles, but they didn't because this guy existed. It's like Brady. How many people over the expanse of his career should have had more rings than they did, but he exists. He's able to do what he can do, and then he's paired with Reed, and it's a level of perfection with Kansas City that breaks other staffs in moments like that, and you just got to kind of deal with it. But I don't think we should just destroy Kyle over it. I mean, it was given where the defense was at that point. I understood the decision that was made.
Charles Robinson, Yahoo Sports. Thank you for adjusting, my friend, and we will talk to you next week.
Safe travels. Thanks.
Absolutely, guys. Take care. Have a good week.
To Charles Robinson, Yahoo Sports. And when we come back, we will react to a bit of Charles. And I don't know, people are still screaming at PK about the Pecorine statue, too. I guess we can get back into that, too. Robby Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode broadcasting from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. By the way, tomorrow is your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with us tomorrow morning at 8:45. Pick to Click's brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Welcome back in. We thank Charles Robinson for joining us. If you'd like to get on the conversation, phone line, text line driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com, 615-737-1025. At some point, we'll get to the trashing of PK from the Pecorine statue lovers. Also, people asking about the Vandy Hoops game. Have y'all talked Vandy Hoops yet? No, but they did get a great win last night, Ezra Manjon with the buzzer beater. But, not a great season for Vanderbilt Hoops. Good for Ezra Manjon. He's been great all year. They have not been. But that's Texas A&M. Blows out Tennessee at home. Comes into Nashville last night and loses to one of the worst two teams in the SEC. We got a caller, Nate in Columbia. You got a Super Bowl thought, Nate.
Yes, guys. With Charles' comments about infrastructure and inclement weather, what do y'all think about the Middle Tennessee area with not as much, I'm going to say, winter weather infrastructure as the North when it comes to, clearing roads and everything, because we close school when there are flurries. Super Bowl's played in winter months, so that is my main concern. By the way, PK, the Pekka statue is very warranted. I'm guessing you're saying it's not because he didn't win a ring.
I'm saying it's not because he played very recently, and statues are for guys who are like legendary over time. You put them up like 15, 20 years after they played, after they're in the Hall of Fame, all of that kind of stuff. We'll get back to that. Look, you're counting on not a big winter storm. When you roll the dice, when you have it in Indianapolis, when you have it in Minnesota, when you have it in New York. Obviously, our weather is more favorable than that. And, they're not going to have, they'll have trucks ready and salt and all of that, but you're counting on not needing them.
Exactly. Like, I hear what Nate's saying, but ultimately I think that the weather trends here are going to be favorable enough for them to not, for this to be rotational, whereas Minneapolis is every once in a great while. You throw one in Detroit. You throw one in New York when they get the new stadium. I think we'll be in the rotation here and I think that the weather – look, we're going 61 today, 63 tomorrow, 59. Then you get into 41 with lows in the high 20s. But then you get, a week from today, high of 68. Like, the weather trend suggests you're probably looking at 50s, 60s. Fine.
I think it's not a. I think the rhythm of the rotation is a little bit different for SoFi and New Orleans and probably Vegas than for Nashville, which is in the rotation, but at a slightly slower rhythm.
Okay. I'm not sure you're right about that. Maybe.
Well, it depends on what happens first time, weather-wise.
But also everything-wise. Everything-wise, right?
Yeah, but Nashville's going to pull. Nashville's a big event city that pull everything off. The one thing that screws up the rhythm of the rotation is the weather. This city knows how to do big events.
That's
no
right.
question.
I think if it's as good as it can be, and it could be great. And again, I think the draft is a huge help. And they're going to get it. They were going to get us if they never did the draft here. They're going to get a Super Bowl here because of the new stadium. You get a Super Bowl as part of the stadium. You're going to get one.
Right.
But I think the draft makes the rotation possible. And if it goes like that, then I think it might be. You know what? I'll take 58 for a week for that, for everything else that you get with it. So I think so, but we'll see.
I'd agree with that.
All right, you had a thought also on the Chiefs.
Yeah, what stops
people
the Chiefs?
are starting
I think people are penning
count on
in,
the Chiefs.
never mind penciling in the Chiefs as three-peating next year, which is just too easy. I mean, it was hard for the Chiefs this year, and it'll be harder for the Chiefs next year. So what stops the Chiefs? Well, number one, injury, right? If something happens to Mahomes, you're in trouble. Number two, opposition catching up or having a good year. Now, who's beaten them head-to-head? Brady twice and Burrow once. I'd fear Cincinnati as the best challenger because of Burrow. Here's the new wrench for me, and a team I'll root for because I've got Kansas City-itis. I'm sick of Kansas City. The Chargers, because I think Herbert is capable, if he's well coached, of being a quarterback challenger to Mahomes, who could play high-level quarterback through a playoff series, finally with a coach who can manage a game and put together a game plan and use Herbert's skills and yardage and all of that for good and not evil. So I'm going to put the Chargers as a potential problem for them in their own division, right?
Wow. That's a lot of Harbaugh love. But I hear what you're saying.
And I'm not saying necessarily.
The AFC has a lot of potential teams that could rise up.
There are a ton of quarterbacks.
Much better conference.
Allen could do it again. I'm not a Lamar guy, but Lamar's got a huge chip on his shoulder here because he's not done things. It's a lot harder.
They
for
lost
them.
17-10. They didn't have a good day, but you can't tell me they couldn't have beaten them. They could have beaten
them. And it's
them.
a lot
Absolutely.
harder for them to navigate their way through than it is for San Francisco to get back. Again, sure. I'll say. Here's the other thing.
Here's my counter, though, real quick. I expect the Kansas City Chiefs to have some competent NFL receivers on their team next year, and if that's the case, I mean, that's the sobering thing about what they did is this offense this year at times was bad,
yes.
And they still won it all.
Here's some other things. They've got $14.5 million in effective cap space, which is 17th. Effective cap space means it accounts for them having 51 players on their roster and for their draft class. And their free agents scheduled to be L'Jarius Sneed, who's one of their two excellent cornerbacks.
As Charles said, you expect them to keep him. McDuffie was incredible.
McDuffie
Sunday.
was phenomenal in that game. Sneed's would be a
really
great
good.
Titans target if he were to get to market. Chris Jones, whose contract voids, who's a hugely influential player for them, whose current deal is a $20 million average per year. He's going to be a difficult guy for them to retain. A lot of people are presuming that he's gone, but they don't have huge problems. Donovan Smith, their left tackle, is another issue.
It was a stopgap. I mean, they've got to get better there too.
Willie Gay, a linebacker. Mike Edwards, safety. Drew Tranquil, a linebacker. Tommy Townsend, their punter, who's the best in the league. After that, it gets not that bad. Deion Bush, safety on this list. But it's not like free agency will tear them apart. Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed, the two big names at the top. And then they need wide receiver help. So
and it's, of course, the most underrated part of this team is the drafting and developing they've done on the defensive side of the ball to have a championship-level defense. No one ever wants to say defense wins championships. It's all about Mahomes, and Reed. Fine. I mean, look, Mahomes did it, right? He was incredible. But this defense was a big part of winning a championship.
And you look at their division again, new coaches with the Raiders who are trending up, though they don't have a quarterback solution necessarily. Harbaugh, who I think is a huge factor. And who am I forgetting there? Who's their fourth? Chiefs, Raiders.
Well, you got your Broncos. Got your
Broncos.
Got your Sean Payton, the genius.
Are probably getting a new quarterback, but that's there's some competitive coaches in that division.
Sure.
Now, I don't know about Antonio Pierce, but the Raiders are probably feeling as good about themselves as they have in a while.
Another quarterback
with
team.
A basis.
Yeah.
With a basis instead of just behind a name.
All right, when we come back, it's the Rex Rant. Unless PK would like to take over with the PK Rant, we'll discuss during the break. 102.5, very nervous. 102.5, 106.3 the game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment, let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
This is the quality stuff you're getting at paulkuharski.com.
What's up? This is Scott Stapp from Creed, and you're listening to Robby and Rexrode on 102.5 The Game.
Thank you. That was just something for our sister station.
Okay, did I say Rexrode right?
Rexrode.
Rexrode. Okay, let me do that
No
again.
worries.
What's up? This is Scott Stapp from Creed, and you're listening to Robby and Rexrode on 102.5 The Game.
Have you not heard that before, PK?
No. They should have given him Rexrode or a mistake on purpose.
I mean, that was, but the fact that was, I guess, apparently, like a genuine mistake, I think is pretty special. Makes me almost want to listen to Creed, but not quite. So... we got a lot of ways we could go.
I'm ready to go here.
You want to go?
Yes.
We got a lot of ways we could go. Because one way that I actually was just thinking
really
about,
have a lot of ways we could go.
Oh, we have a lot of
because
ways we
you're
could go.
weak.
Well, I mean, I think the people are yelling about the Pecorine statue. Someone called you a Mr. Clean cosplay wannabe, which is interesting.
This is interesting.
Very upset with
Look,
you.
I like to make fun of people, but I generally stay away from physical attributes unless a guy's short and he has Napoleon complex as a result.
Oh, okay.
I'll go there.
But bald, we
John
can't
Rich.
do. We can't make fun of bald, though.
No, you can make fun of bald.
Okay.
It's just there's no creativity to it. Like
Right.
if I look at you and you have a funny nose and I say, oh, look at your nose, I'm generally condemned for making fun of you for a physical attribute,
Sure.
right? And it's weak of
Generally.
me to do it, right? I have no control over my hair, and I came to terms with being bald a long time ago.
See, this could
Also,
be
a
rant,
lot
too.
of
This
handsome
could be a
people are
rant, too.
bald. Like Bruce Willis, Ed Harris. Those are some good,
There we
Andre
go.
Agassi, handsome men.
Andre Agassi, I guess that's right. I still think of Andre Agassi with that
I mean,
flow.
got Steffi Graf. So, those guys are all doing fine.
Yeah.
I'm doing fine. If you want to point a finger at me and say, you're bald, that's fine. I survived the playground as a kid, and I'll survive.
Wait, you
now.
were bald at 8 years
No.
old? Okay. All right.
I survived the sticks and stones then, and
Yeah,
I'll survive
yeah.
the sticks and stones now.
Really.
But listen, this rant has gotten away from rants. You bring in some soft, small thing every week, and I think the people deserve a real rant. So I'm prepared to provide a real rant if that's what we want.
Well, you got to go fast.
All right. Yesterday, technologically, everything fell apart in my house. Xfinity/Comcast, the Wi-Fi just goes out inexplicably for like a long period of time. And then I'm talking to them on DMs, and they're saying, a fix can be delayed sometime, due to, what does it say here? Some examples are permissions by city, county, or state permissions. So I say, listen, I pay you a ton of money for a lot of services that I don't even use, and now you're passing the buck. At least take accountability. And then they're sending me for credit. I have to fill out all kind of forms. I say, you know what you haven't given me. Give me the money back. Now, my alternative is Verizon to be on a hotspot, except I get 2 bars on Verizon at my house, which isn't enough for me to have a hotspot. And they consistently tell me, no, the signal's fine at your house. So you both suck. And I need better service from you. And I keep threatening to leave, but I don't really want to leave because it's a pain in my ass. So step up your service, both of you. That's a rant, Joe.
Good rant. Okay, good rant.
Right.
We actually have enough time for me to ask you.
You told me to go fast. I could have slowed it down.
No, that was fine. We do have enough time for me to ask you: is the salary cap real?
Salary cap is real.
What do you think of people who say it's fake?
I think that they like to simplify things, and they can convince simple people of oversimplification of things.
That was way too gentle. I mean, I'm expecting fire and brimstone. I mean, I just laid that up for you. Just lobbed it up for you.
Yeah, I don't like my show to be about Stilly when I'm here.
Don't lie to me, man. Don't lie to me. I had a rant too. Well,
It was soft.
Yeah, it was a
that's why you
soft,
handed
weak
it off.
rant. I
Yeah.
handed it off. Hey, look, man. It's not easy 5 days a week to have a pure outrage rant. And I've got plenty.
Well, let's get me on
I've
here
got
5
plenty
days
of
a
them.
week, and I'll show you how to 5 day a week rant.
Hey, man, that's fine. That works for me. And you can just have the rant. You can. So every day, Monday through Friday, you could come up.
I'll
You
give
could
you
be
4 out of 5.
outraged enough about something. Oh, okay.
Have you met me?
Well, yes. I mean, I yeah. You do whine and complain about a lot of things. I agree, but still, 5 days a week, a little bit of a challenge.
I'll take 4 out of 5.
Someone asked, "What beard oil does PK use?"
Yeah, this guy just follows me everywhere. I think I blocked him on Twitter. He's just obsessed with the beard oil.
And Cian Franklin said,
I don't know that it's funny.
Senator Palpatine on a heater against the Bald Battalion. Let's go. I agree with you in general. The making fun of attributes is weak and too easy and all that. I mean, people will poke fun at my portliness sometimes. Well, I mean, you make fun of my gout. I mean, you know how it goes, man.
Yeah, like amongst friends, if you're sitting around in a press room and stuff, or at a bar with your buddies, that's like a different thing. But
I'm
like
actually okay making fun of my gout in public, like we are right now.
Right.
It's fine.
But like in a broad sense, like people you don't know look at you and they have a problem with you, and the best they could do is go, "You're bald." I mean, yeah, my 6-year-old goddaughter does that.
Right.
That's her level. I would expect better from you, but I'm learning not to.
Yeah.
Not you, the listener.
Yeah. Well, that
Who
is.
doesn't
Well,
like
I'll
me.
give credit.
You don't like the Pecorine statue? You're bald.
Yeah. So
Whoa, that was an engaging, sophisticated debate.
it's Adam Nash, by the way, on Twitter or X at Adam Nash 0426. So that's the one who
Anybody
did
who's
the
got
Mr. Clean wannabe
0426
cosplayer.
in their Twitter handle, I really, really care deeply about their opinion.
As LD points out, have you seen Mr. Clean? He's a badass.
Mr. Clean, I mean, I would love to have Mr. Clean's build and be able to wear a white T-shirt like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty tough. All right, we come back. We're actually going to get to our PK hour that was already scheduled today, and we have a lot more to get to. We talked a little bit about the Titans staff. We're going to get into the Titans, coaches, Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, a lot of discussion, analytics, all of it in the 8 o'clock hour. Robby and Rex Show, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Stand back. There's a hurricane coming through.
It's that time of week again here on Robby and Rex Show. Paul Kaharski, who of course has been here for the first 2 hours too, subbing in for Robby Stanley, and now we have his weekly appearance, 8 o'clock, presented by Parman Energy and Edley's Barbecue. Parman Energy. Visit ParmanEnergy.com, your one-stop petroleum solution. Edley's Barbecue, family-owned businesses local to Nashville, voted Nashville's best barbecue for 2023. Paul?
I am proud to be brought to you by Edley's. I've been proudly wearing my beautiful green long-sleeve Edley's shirt, which is the softest shirt I now own. It's a locally and family-owned business serving up the best barbecue in Nashville. Make sure you check out Edley's Game Day Eats. If you're having a gathering at your house, let Edley's provide the good times and great food for you to enjoy. You can choose from ribs, wings, hot chicken salad, and hot links. No matter the combination, you can't go wrong with Edley's. If you're having people over, they are the people to call. Check out Edley's at any of their convenient locations around town.
How's that shirt look with your shiny bald dome, by the way?
Bald dome.
We got some geniuses in the text line hitting us both up on baldness and
you've got
portliness.
limited baldness.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I mean I got my hair, I got the flow, man, but got a little flow here. Let's talk Titans. What do you say, Paul? You hit the staff a little bit earlier. Someone actually asked on the text line, do they have a D-line coach? They do. It's Tracy Rocker. So they've got everything essentially but a special teams coach. That's the big hire still to come.
And a head strength coach.
And a head strength coach. They have the Frank Perano's three assistants. As you said earlier, though, they're going to hire a strength coach, and then those people will be up for evaluation.
Certainly at least one of them will stay because the players need
some sort of continuity.
Some sort of continuity and link to what they've been doing, who helps transition to what they will be doing.
You said earlier, more impressed with the offensive staff as a whole than the defensive staff. There's some guys who have kind of been recycled. I mean, I think there's a fair amount of, I guess, whatever you want to you like the word retread. I think there's some of that on any NFL staff. Obviously, the defensive staff is you've got the young defensive coordinator, you got some more veteran position coaches, and it's young. It's young on offense, but there is a lot of experience in the NFL, and there's a lot of relationship, of course, with Brian Callahan, which some people don't like. How about this, Paul? Next year you got some offensive line struggles, like how long into the season is like, then you hire your dad. This is what happens when you hire your dad. It's the hiring your buddy thing.
Well, you hear that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon here.
Well, speaking of that, I don't even know if we probably did ask you, but I forgot your answer. We're going to talk more about on the GM side of things as it goes, but I don't understand why we're still talking about Rand Carthon not going to the Senior Bowl.
I don't understand.
Who gives a crap?
Why either?
Who cares? It means nothing.
I don't know. Is your guy still harping on that?
Yeah, apparently. I mean, I'm on Twitter yesterday.
He needs some new content.
I'm on Twitter yesterday, and TD, Teron Davenport, is tagging him, and he's just going off on. I wasn't listening to Jared, but apparently he's still going hard on the. I did hear one thing he said where it was like, you need to put your board together. That's why you need to be at the Senior Bowl. Like, no, you don't have to be at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama to put your board together and to do. What are you talking about?
This is something that Jared, again, like there's certain stuff that he just doesn't understand how it works. So,
why don't you educate him?
When he's told how it works, he doesn't seem to want to understand how it works. So Carthon and whoever else wasn't there. And by the way, Anthony Robinson, who's the head of personnel under Carthon, and Chad Brinker
were there.
Were both there. And so they have the ability to hit a button and look at everything any single guy did, a cut-up of that guy, from closer range than they would have been able to watch him during this Senior Bowl.
While everybody's sitting in the stands again, I haven't been there. I hope
all
to never be there.
All those people who are sitting in the stands are hitting that same button, watching that same film.
Well, I'm saying, like there, it sounds like it's a pretty social, right? Like you're sitting there with a bunch of people talking. There's stuff going on all over the place. When you can isolate it and lock in on who really matters, is that not way more valuable than here's all the stuff going on in front of me?
And also, look, the fact of the matter is, for Jared and for everyone else, the Titans and the other 7 teams who hired new coaches are a little bit behind. Because Rand Carthon, if he was at the Senior Bowl, doesn't know what he's looking for exactly. Because Brian Callahan has to assemble a staff and define for the front office what exactly they want. Carthon talked about this a little bit. You know, they get kind of a defining characteristic description of position. This, and I think Brinker talked about this on the Titans podcast. This is what we want in an X now, in an X receiver. This is what a left tackle should look like in our system. And there are nuanced things to this. So if you go to the Senior Bowl and you get a great look at the left tackle, that's fine. You get the snapshot of him. But you're still coming back and watching that film to revise the way you look at him to fit what Bill Callahan, who'd not yet been hired, wants in a left tackle. What is difficult to understand about this?
I really don't know. So we're getting the
and Stilly, I don't believe, has been to a Senior Bowl. So he's being the authority on what you need to go to the Senior Bowl to see, never having been to one. So stop listening to him about this. Ask yourself this question every time you're listening to somebody, excuse me, on the radio, on a sports talk show, any sports talk show. What is the basis of their authority? On this, Jared has no basis of authority.
Right.
He's going to continue to act like he does, but he does not.
I really did not intend for this to turn into a your obsession.
Well, if he's still going, still going with it, he needs to be shut down.
Yeah, I don't.
So hopefully this effectively shuts him down. This just gave him a segment of content for this afternoon. I'm sure he'll use it. Hello, afternoon audience of the game. You shouldn't be listening to this guy on this topic. He's beating a dead horse for starters. He's expressed his opinion. I'm here to tell you his opinion is a foolish one, and he should drop it and move on to something else. Jared, find different subject matter. It's old, it's tired, and it's incorrect.
Right.
All right, let's go to Ed in New Jersey on the phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHoney.com. Ed, you have a call about Titans fans, and he's in New Jersey, just for you.
Edward, I'm coming up there Friday.
Oh, awesome. Very good. Very good.
See you then.
My question was more on the free agency side. They got a lot more money than they do last year, but do you think the approach will change? Do you think it's just take the same approach and you just get more volume of these guys that are coming, maybe they're playing behind other players and you just get more volume? I'd rather them not go after the big splash, those guys that are deemed one player away when you're not one player away. Just one in your opinion.
No, well, listen, they need to make a couple big splashes, but it depends on what your line is. I mean, is Lloyd Cushenberry the best center available? Well, they're not looking at it as one player away, but if they go out and get a great center,
player, then that still can be a foundational piece.
That's a foundational piece.
Yeah.
They have to step forward and go get a couple good players without, and overpaying for a couple is fine with me because they now have the ability to do that. But you don't go force it at wide receiver. I don't think T. Higgins is coming to market. I don't think Michael Pittman offers what they need in terms of speed. Calvin Ridley is a guy that repeatedly people have told me they're scared of what he becomes with money. And then the receivers drop off after that. Mike Evans is old. And Marquise Brown.
Mike Evans, Kansas City Chief. What do you think?
Yeah, I could see that.
Oh, boy.
Hollywood Brown, adds kind of the zip the Titans would want, I hope. But, what do you pay him? That's a guy I'd put a number on, and he's probably going to do better than that number. So then you're into a different batch of wide receivers where you're looking for more of a role player than your A guy, and you've got to find your A guy in the draft.
But philosophically, to Ed's question, no one thinks they're a player away, but it doesn't mean you don't get the big player who is part of the next foundation, right?
You can get the best
guard. If you can somehow get T. Higgins, and the Bengals are tagging him, and Paul Daner for The Athletic reported that, they're going to tag him, but, then we'll see what happens with the tag. Do they negotiate a long-term deal? Does it turn into a tag and trade? I don't know. But, I mean, you've got the flexibility, the money, the cap space to do big things. You don't, and this is what Brinker said on his podcast, which I thought was a fascinating podcast. You don't just spend because you have it. You spend. And that's the thing, too. It's like if you don't get plan A here, or whatever, I mean, are you still like, got to still go plan B and get somebody at whatever spot? Center's a good one. How urgent is it? Cushenberry's good. I think that would be a good addition. But how urgent is it to upgrade from Aaron Brewer at center?
I think pretty crucial. But, if you don't get one of the three guys that you decided fit you, you might have to take an L there. So then maybe you crank it up a little bit more at a different position,
And look,
and if
center,
you get L'Jarius Sneed or Jalen Johnson at corner, well, that's a big win.
For sure. Oh, absolutely.
so
Either of those guys would be a huge win. Like Cedric Van Pran is a Georgia center who, by the way, for example, you could get like in the fourth round. I mean, like you can.
I just took him in one of these mocks.
There you go. I've seen him go in a lot of mocks of the Titans. So a lot of different ways you can go, but they're going to spend to some extent.
Look, they've got huge needs across the board. There's not a position on the team where they don't need some help, and they're going to have to find a good deal of it in free agency. Some of it's going to be B level, but hopefully some of it's A level.
All right, we'll continue this when we come back. Robby Rexrode, if you want to join in. The phone and text line driven by WilsonCountyHoney.com, 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode, proudly sponsored by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. We're broadcasting from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Got Paul Kaharski in all day here for Robby today, and, of course, in it is regular weekly time as well. So I got some questions for you, PK. If you're all right, unless you want to present a thought before I get to these questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, I got 3 good ones that I like here on the text line driven by WilsonCounty.com. 1, what about Justin Jefferson? I don't think the Vikes are going to pay him what he wants. Do you overspend for a Justin Jefferson? I'm still dubious, by the way, of that he's not going to still end up there. But my answer to that, I might really overspend for Justin Jefferson. He's freaking
Trade-wise?
Well, whatever it may be, right?
Titans can't make a huge trade. They have too many needs to give up the kind of pick haul it would take
and
to
they don't
get
have a
somebody
huge haul
like
to
Justin
offer.
Jefferson or Brendan Ayuk. So if you're going to trade for a guy like that, you're going to be giving up a couple picks this year plus a value pick next year, and you're in the pick hole again. If they make any kind of trade, they get picks. They can't give picks. They can't. They have a need at every single position on the field. Name a position where they don't have a need. You could conceivably go forward with what you have at tight end, but it's not enough.
As you're talking, and I have no issue with what you just said there, but I've been defending Kyle Shanahan all week, but they just showed his presser from yesterday. Can I just say, Kyle Shanahan and also Mike Vrabel and anybody else who isn't 22 or younger, stop wearing the freaking flat bill hat. It looks stupid as hell.
Agreed.
Curve your hat a little bit.
Trying to relate to
kids.
The youth.
Kids wear that. You're not kidding. I mean,
They're
Vrabel
trying to relate to the youth.
I think at one point I said something to Vrabel. I was like, dude, what's up with the hat? Come on, man.
And he said, what are you doing with your hands?
You're a damn new.
What are you doing with your hands?
Exactly.
That's his comeback. And
It
boom.
is. And he got me. He won. All right, Ron says, PK, don't you think this team will need a good experienced QB to back up Levis? No one's talking about that. You mentioned earlier.
I mentioned all the time. Jacoby Brissett.
You mentioned Mitch Trubisky. You're a big Mitch guy.
I think Trubisky's not a terrible option, but I like Jacoby Brissett. I like Gardner Minshew if he comes to the market. I like Josh Dobbs. I always forget one, but there are 4 or 5
I like Dobbs
good
too.
veteran quarterbacks, and they need to have one of them. And there's no reason not to spend on a backup quarterback in the way that they've been limited before.
I'm a Dobbs fan, and yes, personally, I like great guy, and he was great at UT and all that stuff. I just think he's a good two. Obviously we saw last year, it was a great story for a few weeks, and then it's like, okay, now you kind of see why he's a backup. But that's still a good backup and a great guy to have in your building.
Yes. I'm
a fan of that idea. I mean, last year there was some, especially the Titans Vol fan combo, who were like, he's got to come in and start and all this stuff. Like, no, he's not a starter, but he's a very good backup. Josh in Kentucky says, trying to fix all the Titans' issues in one offseason is a fool's errand. Way too many flaws in the roster. Entire O-line needs to be rebuilt through the draft. That's hard to do in one offseason. Every time somebody says that, Josh, and you may have heard me say it, but I'll say it every time. Just remember that in 2015, and that I was not here. 2016 was my first year here. But I know that in 2015, and you can attest, Paul, it was an atrocious offensive line, a part of firings and changes in the organization. And now, granted, you had a franchise left tackle who figured it out in 16, so that's a big part of it, but you get one center who's a great leader and a tough guy and a hell of a center, and you draft a Pro Bowl level right tackle, and all of a sudden you're not great at guard, but you have a legit NFL offensive line, you have a good running back, and you're a totally different team that can compete in the NFL. So in one offseason, you can do a lot.
Absolutely. I don't know why people want to slow down the process. Don't get your hopes up too much.
Yeah, like the entire roster, I agree.
Teams make jumps all the time. There's a worst to first, division-wise, every season. I'm not saying expect it, but I am saying allow for the possibility. Why not?
Sure. I mean, you can – look, I still think that Peter Skoronski is going to have a chance to be a good player. And if he's going to be a good player, I feel like the O-line coach they just hired is going to have a pretty good chance of illuminating that, right? So if you just take that, you take him and you project a bump. I think Brunskill's fine at right guard. And I personally, Paul, and you may disagree with me on this. We may have argued about this. We may argue about it more. I personally am not giving up on Nicholas Petit-Frere as a guy who could be a right tackle in this league. We'll see. Again, if someone's going to do it, you would think that Bill Callahan would have a chance, right? I think they've got a few depth pieces that you could mix and match. So if you fix left tackle, like emphatically fix it, and you have a chance to emphatically fix left tackle, and go in free agency or later in the draft and get a better center, your offensive line could be way better, and that still leaves picks and cap space to do other things. It's not – I don't think it's as bad as it was last year. We all agree it was awful. It doesn't mean that it's unfixable, and I think Skoronski is a part of why.
Agree. I just a lot of people jumped to Bill Callahan can fix these guys, or they can go on the cheap and bring in guys they can fix, and then they don't need to spend high picks or high dollars on. They do. I mean, if you look at the lines he's had, he's had a lot of good players on those lines. Now, has he had other players that he's turned into good players along those lines? And has he done wonders with depth guys who've stepped up and played very well when good players have gone down? Yes. But on the first 5, has he had some very good players? Yes. So I hope they don't, and I'm not expecting them to go the route like, well, we'll get one good player and and another B-level free agent, and we can fix everything from there. I certainly hope they don't wind up thinking that way. I don't expect that they'll wind up thinking that.
It is a fascinating kind of discussion of, like, when you have an asset that everyone believes is this valuable, is it like, does that mean you can cut corners a little bit, or does that mean you actually should supply that as best possible? But I think the
league has changed.
The answer in this league is,
the league has
talent.
changed. Mike Herndon did a piece where he looked like at what you're more likely to hit on in the second round, looking at the Titans' first 2 picks, and you're far more likely to find a good receiver in the second round than you are to find a big-time offensive lineman. And based on that, and I've been offensive line first round guy the whole time. This is a hell of a receiver draft.
This is a hell of a receiver draft.
Based on that also helps me lean towards offensive linemen in the first round.
Right. I'm with you. I think that's a great point. And look, history doesn't dictate anything, but the best, most talented receiver they've had here was a second-round pick.
Yes.
Who's gone.
They gave away for Traylon Burks.
Yeah. So
first-round receiver.
We're going to do the giveaway. I hope that Nick Keiser has a question. Pair of tickets to see Kenny Chesney, Zach Brown, Band, special guests Megan Maroney, and Uncle Cracker, Nissan Stadium, Saturday, August 3rd. Of course, it's Valentine's week. This is our last question. Today is Valentine's Day. So the last question is, and we want texts, 615-737-1025, and Nick's going to pick the winner.
Yes, we are going to do text. I'll give you to the end of the show, and I will text you personally on our text line, our winner. My question is, can you tell me your best Valentine's Day pun? The best pun related to Valentine's.
PK loves this.
There are going to be some good.
Loves this.
I think
the
there'll
best
be some good
pun
answers.
after the 54th pun wins.
All right, your best Valentine's Day pun. We got more questions on the Titans, so we will get to that and talk a little bit of Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back, Robby Rexrode. Paul Kaharski for Robby. Paul Kaharski's appearance presented by Parman Energy and Edley's Barbecue. Parman Energy. Visit ParmanEnergy.com, your one-stop petroleum solution. Edley's family-owned business is local to Nashville, voted Nashville's best barbecue for 2023.
Edley's is a local family-owned business and was voted the best barbecue in Nashville for the second year in a row in 2023. I have no doubts about what's going to happen in 2024. It all makes sense because their food is spectacular and their service is second to none. Their goal is to make the world a better place by making people happy, and they're certainly doing just that. Go support Nashville's best barbecue at one of Edley's convenient locations or get Edley's catered for your next event. You can't go wrong with Edley's. Go check them out, and I cannot recommend the burnt ends highly enough.
I'm going to go with brisket nachos. I will
Also,
destroy some brisket nachos at Edley's.
Superior food.
Viking Matt on the text line driven by WilsonCountyIdaho.com wants the Titans to trade back with the Vikings to get picks. So, you get the idea of a team trying to move up, possibly get a QB, which is certainly a possibility for the Titans. And I can see that, but also I think if you've got someone you think is a great player at 7, you have a chance to draft that great player. You hope you don't have too many opportunities in the top 10. So it's an opportunity.
Listen, you want ideally everybody to want quarterbacks. You want guys like Bo Nix to rise. You want guys like Penix to rise, and that would help your cause.
Yes.
If 4 quarterbacks, 5 quarterbacks, a Michigan guy, all rise, the more quarterbacks that go in the top 6, maybe that tempts somebody to come up to 7. Then your guy's going to be there.
Right.
Conceivably later. So root like hell for quarterbacks, and quarterbacks tend to rise.
So it's like the two sides of the QBs rising. And on the one hand, your guy all dunes a whatever will be there. On the other hand, they might want your spot. So then is it enough to move back somewhere and still get your guy or one of your guys? That's the question. To me, I feel like the Titans are in a spot where taking someone at 7 would seem to be
safe.
The move.
And it's a risky. If these teams are coming up for quarterbacks, that's fine. But, does the team at 8, does the team at 9 take your guy? How far back can you go? You're safe at 10 if 2 teams come up for quarterbacks.
Right.
It's very dangerous. There's something out today that Harbaugh, here we go with this stuff. Harbaugh likes all.
Likes all. Yeah, the Chargers and all. Yes. And, of course, this is where you also get into, hey, is this real? Let's throw it out there. It's not real, but let's throw it out there. And on and on. Last year was especially annoying. I want to ask you something. We got into a little bit when you got unhinged and went after Stilley again. But I feel like Rand Carthon and Gentry SS, we had him on this week. He wrote, I thought it was a good column. I didn't necessarily agree with all of it, but I thought it was a good column about Rand Carthon and the Titans really, really pushing hard for, like, Rand's amazing, but then still very little actual access to him. But it feels to me, PK, like, first of all, I'm a little bit fatigued by this, and yet I'm bringing it up, so that's on me. But I feel like we're getting, and this kind of relates to, like, TD going at Jared, and I've heard TD say it to Jared, like, this is personal. A lot of people have directed that at you, that you have a personal issue with Carthon, which, again, I've defended this, I think, with a rant, this idea of, like, he's not giving you scoops. The point is not scoops. It's about just having a conversation with media. I mean, media have questioned someone in that position, an AD, coach, GM, any of these positions that are front-facing in organizations, college or pro, they should talk to media, in my opinion.
Well,
they should. That's a professional thing to do, is to talk to media.
I feel badly that I haven't read Gentry's piece because I think I probably am very closely aligned with it. And this is my overall thing, and I wrote this about Todd Torricelli, who's the director of sports medicine, and was very quickly retained. Within 14 days of the end of the season, during which the Titans fired Mike Vrabel and hired Brian Callahan, Todd Torricelli was immediately retained by a team that swore it was going to look at every injury thing up and down. Now, Todd Torricelli's won a big award in the last year, and he's had 3 people, go on and be hired as directors of sports medicine or some such elsewhere. So he's got a very good reputation. But are you looking at everything medical-wise or not? And he's a guy that whose department sends people back on the field, doesn't, train them to not get hurt, so to speak. But if you're telling me organizationally we're looking at absolutely everything related to medicine, and then within 14 days it's clear he's being retained, and I'm told he can retire when he wants, which is probably after next year, and you don't take more than he's involved in the hiring of a coach. He's thanked for his role in hiring the coach. Well, I'm sick of taking your word for it that he's good. I want to see for myself somehow in some interaction with him. Not, hey, tell me about so-and-so's knee, but some kind of human interaction with the guy to tell for myself what he's like. And I need that with Rand. And I don't have that to a sufficient degree with Rand. And Rand and I have talked about that and talked about having more of that. But I agree with Gentry's premise. I'm hearing from a lot of people how great he is. And I hear from a lot of people how incredible he is with people. And if he's not incredible with people, he's not been incredible with anybody in the media.
Yeah,
and that's weird to me.
Yeah,
people who are incredible with people in the NFL industry do well with media.
Yeah. Rand on his podcast, which I thought was interesting. They were both interesting. He brought up something about, like, I'm not into transaction relationships. I mean, to me, transaction relationships, if you want to get into news breaking, okay, then that's something that gets transactional. But if you just want to, like, conversations, again, like, help me understand this, right? You've said that. You start a lot of your texts to people, help me understand that. That's the whole thing, right? Like,
am I right if I...
Do you want your media, the people who cover you, to be informed or not, or have any kind of... It's not transactional. It's just like... It's like common courtesy. But I want to ask you on Rand... Because,
also, just on that transactional relationship
go ahead.
Seems to conflict. When Ian Rappaport is running around doing cartwheels that Rand Carthon got the job, saying... He's one of the best sources I've ever had, and he knows my kid's name. Well, are they friends? Because they're Ian Rappaport's whole life is transactional relationships.
Right. That's true. That's a fair point. Now, Mike Keith brought up on that broadcast, the Official Titans podcast, the Denard Wilson hire, and Robby and I talked about this, but I want to get your thought on that too. Denard Wilson, coveted, pursued, comes here. I didn't realize the personal background that Rand and Denard Wilson had before. Yeah, they were both going for the same job at the Falcons. Do you buy that? Because I don't buy the player thing much. Like, I mean, as far as coming to a place for a GM, I think that's bizarre to even bring up. But coaches, I could buy. Is he going to be an asset in that way?
I think he's probably an asset that helps them get Denard Wilson. Okay? They lost Terrell Williams, who I think they wanted to stay. So we're gonna look at, hey, look, they beat a bunch of people for Denard Wilson. But we're not saying, hey, they lost Terrell Williams and they got a downgrade to Tracy Rocker. So
yeah, so
let's look at the full picture.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. That's a great point. Win some, lose some. Does it more win? If again, this is, and it is secondhand. Like, I mean, Brinker was very emphatic in praising Rand and talking about his relationships around the league. I mean, just do you buy that over the long haul, over years, that there's some sort of benefit to the Titans?
I think there's some sort of benefit to the Titans, but I think they're overestimating.
Overselling it?
Overselling it. From what they tell us, he's a phenomenal relationship guy. And his ability to use relationships that he's had or to forge new relationships with somebody like Chad Brinker, who we didn't know, should prove beneficial to this team. But they're overselling it when they say he's going to win free agents off.
I don't understand that.
Personal relationships.
I mean, I think
you don't even meet those free agents. Free agents don't go shop anymore. Day one free agents are agreeing to terms minutes after the initial, it's called the, pre-tampering period or whatever. I hate that name for it.
Yeah.
But those contracts are being done very quickly, and they have nothing to do with the relationship that a player forges with the GM. They have
like
everything to do with money and opportunity and maybe you know a coach, or maybe you got a guy in the locker room who tells you, hey, this is a good place, you want to be here. That's it. There's not time for that other stuff.
Yeah, there's another interesting point along those lines that I wanted to get to. We will get to that in our last segment here. Robby Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. All right, last segment, Robby and Rexrode with a little wham bringing us out. That's beautiful. What a perfect song on Valentine's Day.
Did you ever get your captain?
Keezer, you were such a romantic. What?
Did you ever get your captain in Tennille?
Yeah, he played it, But
butchered it?
apparently, there was no singing. So some songs we can't have the
need
rights
to hear
to.
the captain and the Tennille. You can have 15 seconds of anything.
Captain and Tennille would have been perfect for this one too. Love will keep us together on Valentine's Day, but that's okay. I mean,
We're not doing Valentine's Day show.
I'm not going to complain about "Careless Whisper" from Wham. Don't get me
No,
wrong.
that was strong.
Yeah. Okay. Ron on the text line driven by WilsonCountyHead.com says, "Why would Rand give the media ammunition to talk bad about what he said or didn't say, knowing it's just a vision first? You got to put it together." So Rand not giving the media or you what you want doesn't make him a bad
Stop
GM.
with that. And that's not what it's all about.
We're not talking about the vision.
But that was a big failure. This idea that giving some toned down elementary school level vision was going to give candidates like the answer to the PhD delivery that a coach needed is just so
okay.
You don't understand.
I agree with you. Also, the whole thing is like, who cares what he? I mean, like, okay,
Say
what if he said
I
something?
cannot answer.
What if he said
time.
something? How more informed would be? Great. The vision is to win championships. Every single team, just put it on your wall. The vision is to win Super Bowls. Okay, thank you. I don't care.
The fact that
we made too much of it. We made too much of it.
But the fact that his choice was to not answer that,
well,
to me, was telling in the moment.
Yeah, I mean
that's
that
an
was
example of him not. Exactly
that
what
day
I said.
was an example
a guy
of him
who's a
being
huge
forced to
relationship guy, a huge relationship guy, a huge people person, doing that poorly in that situation is a disconnect for me.
It is, but
I'm told he's a fantastic people person, but for 20 minutes he did not perform well. That's a disconnect for me.
It did at least allow you to say huge several times. Okay, an unnamed texter says, you guys forgot to mention Carthon's unimpressive handling of Byard and Henry last year when you discuss him. I don't know what you're talking about with Henry there. Byard, obviously, I think they could have handled that better. I guess Rand could have handled that better. Last year was all hazy.
He deferred to Vrabel.
But
two people can speak from an organization on an issue. The Titans have had a problem with this. They've given singular during Vrabel's era. Vrabel was a singular voice. Now they say Vrabel had too much power.
After Robinson, you mean?
Vrabel had too much power. We didn't like that he was brash and all of this stuff. But during his time, we gave him that power. But we hated it. We hated it. But when we fired J-Rob, who was his boss, the person that we had speak about the firing was his employee. Make no sense.
Yeah. Those are also fair points. But I'm disappointed you didn't get huge in there. So let me ask you about Chad Brinker. We were talking about this off air because of those two podcasts. You wrote about it at paulkuharsky.com.
There you go.
Thank you. So I thought it was fascinating. I just think his story in general is fascinating. But what do you think? You took it one as sort of a commentary on being a little behind. The Titans were behind. I mean, in terms of analytics staffing, that's documented, right? But also the model that's being built out. The predictive injury model, to me, is like fascinating, but also like how?
Yeah, I'm suspect on that. I'm encouraged by Chad Brinker. I'm very anxious to see stuff. I'm skeptical that everything takes so long to build out. It builds in some time cushion for you. Well, in 3 years,
is it data? Is it data that's not available yet?
See this stuff. I don't know. If it's data, then do you need data entry people? Well, hire data entry people.
Well, maybe you need the data to emerge. You're talking about players of the future that you're drafting or signing.
Well, you can apply it to free agency, I would think, and the data on the free agents is
whatever it is,
isn't it?
Yeah, whatever it is.
I don't know. The injury predictive stuff, I'm skeptical of. If you could predict the injuries, if he could create a system that predicts injuries in a way other people cannot, he's in line to be a billionaire, and he needs to.
He did go to business school.
Yeah,
I mean that's that. The whole story is for people who don't know. I mean, the podcast is good. Also, John Greenberg wrote a piece on him at The Athletic a few weeks ago that goes through it too. Just getting the Packers that send me to Kellogg Business School at Northwestern and being around a bunch of CEOs and coming up with some really interesting stuff. But I think he came off really impressively in the podcast. I am interested in like the dynamic, even because he is in charge now. He's president of all these other things, right? And Rand is like so focused,
personnel.
But also, I mean, Brinker's still heavily involved in personnel, right?
Yeah.
So how does that work? Do you know?
Well, Brinker said in that, I'm a lot less likely to be looking at the 7th round guy, and I'm a lot more likely
Big
to be,
picture.
hey, you look at these 4 guys and help me narrow them down. So he's going to have his fingerprints on top people for this team.
Who won, Keezer? Oh, my God, you muted yourself. You got a winner?
No, I was talking to myself because I was shocked that you even got to it. Okay, here we go. So Scott from Franklin
Scotty
is our winner. And I need to pull it up because
dude, you
I
got
was
like
not
10
prepared.
seconds.
I know you didn't.
I want a Valentine's pun to end the show, Nick.
Here it
Keezer.
is. Here it is. Valentine's Day on a Wednesday, bringing a whole new meaning to the phrase "Hump Day."
Oh,
good
look
God.
at you.
And with
Don't block the box. Be sure to lock your locks. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, PK. Chase and Big Joe are up next.